I want there to be a moment in which Dr. Ford can share her story. I am a victim of an attempted rape and a physical assault 20 years ago. I have written countless op-eds on the issue of sexual assault, and I have advocated for women. I feel very strongly on this issue, but I also feel equally strong about the fact that this is about fairness. This is about justice. And we in this country believe that anyone, regardless of gender, race, socioeconomic class, are innocent until proven guilty. And to ignore that and to move away from that belief is really a very dangerous notion for our country.
Speakers at Thursday's Women for Kavanaugh rally include Carrie Severino of Judicial Crisis Network, Marjorie Dannenfelser of Susan B. Anthony List, and Patrice Leonwuka of the Independent Women's Forum. I'm Chris Woodward.
An English language advocacy organization is urging President Trump to revoke an executive order that mandates burdensome translations on the federal government. Chad Groening has more.
While President Trump has reversed several Obama-era policies dealing with illegal immigration, Executive Order 13166, signed by Bill Clinton in 2000, remains on the books. It requires every federal agency and every recipient of any federal funds to provide translation services, interpreters, and documents in any foreign language which is requested. Stephen Gushov is executive director of Pro English.
Back when Bush 43 was president, there was a government study done. And at that time, and this was 10 to 15 years ago, it was estimated that that was costing American taxpayers probably about $2 billion a year for those government-mandated interpretation and translation costs. So the number today in 2018 has to be much higher than $2 billion a year.
So Gushov says 13166 is an onerous executive order and must be repealed by President Trump as soon as possible.
We've had 5 meetings, and sometimes the wheels move quite slowly here in Washington, whether it's immigration or English advocacy or any other number of issues. The meetings have always been very good. We know we have an ally in President Trump. When he was campaigning in 2015 and 2016, he would frequently say on the stump that in this nation, in order to assimilate, you have to speak English. So we know he's sympathetic to what we're proposing.
So Gushov hopes the president will revoke 13166 soon, and he believes this could be another election issue for 2018 midterms. I'm Chad Groening.
And sales of new homes climbed 3.5% in August, snapping a 2-month decline. The Commerce Department says newly built homes sold at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of $629,000. American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Peter.
My name's Rashawn. I was addicted to heroin and cocaine, living in parks, eating out of dumpsters. I just didn't have any hope. And now that I'm in Teen Challenge, I'm completely drug-free.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
America will always choose independence and cooperation over global governance.
He's redoing all of these negotiations, so for the first time, Americans aren't suffering. It's fair for America, and the countries know that it's unfair. They know it has to change. They don't like it, but they know he's right.
The truth is, I've never sexually assaulted anyone in high school or otherwise.
We did not receive from the documents that they sent in any information or the results of the lie detector test that had been mentioned in the Washington Post, and we didn't receive the notes from the therapist that had also been referenced in the Washington Post.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. Stacy Washington. I'm also the co-chair for National Center's Project 21 Advisory Council. And I'm happy to report I'm this year's Journalist of the Year for the Second Amendment Foundation. So fantastic to be with you today. Find out more at urbanfamilytalk.com, afr.net, stacyontheright.com, and Twitter feeds hither and yon. Welcome to the program. We are going to be speaking with, very shortly, Cassie Smedile of the RNC. She's national spokesperson there. She's going to come on and give us some updates on current events, but specifically, we'll be talking a little bit about the Kavanaugh. It's an ongoing cycle, and I just skimmed the information about the newest accusers, because if there were really that many accusers, wouldn't they have come forward 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even 3 months ago when he became under consideration for the Supreme Court? Why are they only coming forward now? Sounds like the same pylon they executed on Herman Cain, and we should not stand for it. So we're also going to be talking today a little bit about Beto O'Rourke. I wish we could just use his regular name instead of this made-up name. Mr. O'Rourke lied about a DUI that he actually participated in. He tried to leave the scene of the accident, and even the liberals are crying foul over the fact that he's just not telling the truth about it. So the big show for today, though, and yesterday has really been, aside from Kavanaugh, has been President Trump's amazing performance at the United Nations. He's in rare form. It's as if all the rallies with the 30,000 people here, 20,000 there, it's just got him revved up, and he's in rare form. He's talking about his country in ways that we haven't heard presidents speak about our country since Ronald Reagan. And I'm not going to lie. I like it. I like it a lot. I like to see a leader of something, whether it's a company or a not-for-profit or a family. I like to see that leader speak about the organization or group that they're leading in a very strong and positive way. To me, that indicates good leadership. You feel good about the organization you're leading, and instead of going out and bad-mouthing it and down-talking it to others, you go out and you say, oh, yeah, we got stuff we're working on, but here's what we've been able to accomplish. And oh, by the way, we're autonomous. We're going to be, we're going to have our national sovereignty. We're going to take care of ourselves. And Trump's comments in this area, they haven't wavered. It's nothing new that he said at the UN. It's just that it was new that he said it at the UN. It's new that people who sat there and heard their countries taken to task still had enough respect for Donald Trump for being really honest and off the cuff that afterwards they really wanted to spend time with him. And he spent time with the delegates. He actually hosted the delegates in an event, which again, this is outside of what you have to do. It's outside of the normal protocol. It's extra. And we all know how we love it when someone is extra with us. Don't you love it when someone who doesn't have to invite you out or include you in on a lunch or something like that includes you? Don't you love it when someone who's in a position of authority who doesn't have to spend extra time going around and shaking hands at a luncheon or something like that, they could just leave quickly and, leave some people who work for them to kind of make the rounds and pass out cards, when that person takes the time to spend that time with you? All of the assertions that President Trump is mentally unfit or that he's got all these problems don't hold the smell test. They can't hold water. And you know why? Because mentally ill people don't want to stand around and make small talk because they're afraid they're going to be found out. Mentally ill people don't want to do big, huge speeches at rallies and then also go address the UN. Remember, we have an entire functioning cabinet and individuals who can step out and speak on behalf of the president. So again, I really appreciate it when, if you're going to come at me with your facts and your information, bring your charts and your graphs and all of your statistics and data, and let's have at it. Let's go toe to toe and back and forth, and let's see who's right. And if the Democrats were doing that with President Trump, it would be totally, I can deal with that. That's what I can deal with, because then we're dealing in truth and fiction. We're dealing in yes or no. We're dealing with right or wrong. Absolutes. You can figure things out. You can see where, yeah, you may have that perspective, but the truth is these statistics show that Americans want this. These are what Americans have been voting for. This is et cetera, et cetera. Quantitative data. And if the Democrats would just take some time to build some of that up and come at the president with that, I think you would see the entire country breathe a sigh of relief and think, oh, so we really are still a country. We really are still a nation of laws and not men. We really are still a place where the rule of law means something. Instead of a place where any made-up accusation can be used to destroy you and your family and derail an entire process that up until this point has functioned relatively normally, except for the Clarence Thomas and Bork nominations, we've seen, pretty decent behavior, at least from the right, not from the left. And so, speaking of the UN, President Trump was in the process of discussing kind of like an update, like, here's where the nation stands under my leadership. And he was not pulling any punches. He was talking about the roaring economy and the low number of people who are without jobs. And he said that the country is doing better than it has basically ever. Now, you may say that's an exaggeration. I mean, I think it's up for interpretation, but he clearly wasn't going to come up and say, we're just doing fine, or we're doing okay, or we're doing all right. No, he went up there and he got blustery and he got real. And the people in the room, they laughed. And so the media is saying, oh, they laughed at him. They were mocking him. It didn't sound like that to me. Early this morning when I heard the clip and I actually posted it on Facebook, I thought, this sounds like they're having fun. The entire room, they laughed, and then he said, oh, it's true. Straight off the teleprompter. He was not on teleprompter. He's like, oh, it's true. And they continued to kind of laugh a little bit like, yeah, you're probably right. And then he went on with his speech. I love it when the proof is what you can hear audibly. What if you watch the video, you can see that it's not derision. Laughter of derision sounds different than kind of laughter in acknowledgement and being in the moment. So here is that audio, and you judge for yourself. It's number 3.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, world leaders, ambassadors, and distinguished delegates. 1 year ago, I stood before you for the first time in this grand hall. I addressed the threats facing our world, and I presented a vision to achieve a brighter future for all of humanity. Today, I stand before the United Nations General Assembly to share the extraordinary progress we've made. In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
So he's talking about it, right? He's talking about America. And he's like, we've achieved some pretty fantastic stuff, better than the entire history of this country. And some people in the audience were like, really? And that's pretty bold. And then he's like, oh, it's true. And that's when they broke out laughing, because they're like, this guy is too much. And we've all been there. You've been there in the audience when someone says something and you're like, the reaction is instant. And then they kind of look back at you like, prove me wrong. And then you in acknowledgement of their boldness, you share a moment with the audience. That's good public speaking, actually. If you can engender goodwill in your audience by getting them to laugh, it diffuses the tension, and it kind of sets the stage for what they can expect. Even if they hear things they don't like, they're more predisposed to enjoying your speech because you made them laugh. And this is a gift that Donald Trump has. And I know that people hate him, and there's all this, and I know there's all you have to do is say his name, and some people just they're triggered to the point of being unable to function. And if that's you, you can let it go. Like, you don't have to live your life that way. It's not that serious. We survived Obama. You will survive Trump. But I just thought it was just such a nice moment. And with the contentious nature of the relations between many of the delegates, their countries and our country, and the fact that, a lot of these countries, they don't like America because all of their citizens want to live in America. They don't like America because we export a lot of really horrible entertainment content, a lot of sexual deviancy, and really just, depravity. We export it and we put it on the internet, and then they get it in their countries and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. Because they're like, why are the Americans putting out this content? And goodness only knows, sin, it's a terrible thing, and we really have to fight against it. But all in all, it's not really, when you're listening to someone speak, yes, it's about all of that, but then again, it's not. And the reason it's not is because in public speaking, you can get people who may not agree with you at all to at least listen to you if you can make them laugh. And that's what happened there. So he went on to talk about America First. And I love this part. Like, this should be your anthem. If you were a rock star, this should be the music you come out to. These words, this thought process, this idea, you dance with the one who brought you. If you don't love America, there's 194 other countries you could immigrate to. Renouncing your citizenship is a very cheap prospect. You don't have to be here. But if you are here, then you should know who buttered your bread, who bought it, who baked it, who put it in front of you. And once you've got that realization, you thank your Lord and Savior that you get to live here, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're Black or Asian or Hispanic. If you're here legally and this is your country of citizenship, you should be praising God that you're a citizen of this country and you get to have the beauty, and really, it's a gift of the society of other Americans. As flawed and backward and horrible as we can sometimes be, you better be glad you're living here and you have citizenship here rather than Rwanda or Iran or even Saudi Arabia, which I've been to, and I think it's a beautiful country, but I would never want to be a citizen there. Even the westernized country, Germany, you can't own your own guns. Great Britain, you can't defend yourself in your own home. You better be glad you're an American instead of sitting up talking bad about this country and all of us and how this is just a horrible place. Well, then get out. So listen to him describe this American first concept. It's number 4.
America's economy is booming like never before. Since my election, we've added $10 trillion in wealth. The stock market is at an all-time high in history, and jobless claims are at a 50-year low. African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment have all achieved their lowest levels ever recorded. We've added more than 4 million new jobs, including 500,000 manufacturing jobs. We have passed the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history. We've started the construction of a major border wall, and we have greatly strengthened border security. We have secured record funding for our military, $700 billion this year and $716 billion next year. Our military will soon be more powerful than it has ever been before. In other words, the United States is stronger, safer, and a richer country than it was when I assumed office less than 2 years ago.
Okay. So, yeah, dance with the one who brought you. Or find somebody else to dance with. It's your choice. But if you're going to complain, do it in your head. Stop acting like this is the worst place on the planet, because it's not. It's the best place, and you're just glad to be here. You're blessed to be here. Come on now. You know I'm telling the truth. We'll be back with more after this.
Good news. You are not stuck with your health care plan. Really. You have a choice, and it's a great one. It's called MediShare, and if you've heard about it and wondered what exactly it is, it's a way that people share their health care bills, and these are people who have a common faith, who want to be part of something beautiful that not only meets their health care needs, but the needs of others too. And it's people who love to save money, big time. MediShare members typically save $500 a month per family on their health care costs. That is a life changer for people. So this could be for you. Maybe it's what you've been looking for, a way to pay health care bills that's not only very smart financially, but it's even profound. MediShare is a nonprofit with 400,000 members nationwide who pray for and share with each other. So yes, you're not stuck. There's another way, and it could save you a lot. Hit *345 to find out how much you can save on your health care. Message and data rates may apply. That's *345.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. I have a friend who has suffered with depression. He experienced rejection and horrible abuse as a child. Although he's a grown man now, still from time to time this dark pain revisits him with a vengeance. Sometimes he cries uncontrollably and finds it difficult to be around others or even to get out of bed. He's gotten some wonderful help, and God is ministering to him through others and through his word. You know, life can land some pretty severe blows. In the scriptures, David the psalmist, the great warrior of God, the greatest king Israel ever had, there's an abundant evidence he struggled from time to time with despair. Listen to Psalm 6, verses 6 through 10. David says, I am weary with my sighing. Every night I make my bed swim. I dissolve my couch with my tears. My eye has wasted away with grief. It has become old because of all my adversaries. Depart from me, all who do iniquity, for the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord has heard my supplication. The Lord receives my prayer. All my enemies shall be ashamed and greatly dismayed. They shall turn back. They shall suddenly be ashamed. I believe David is giving us some keys, some insights into how to turn from despair toward hope. First of all, we need to experience and acknowledge the reality of our pain. Secondly, we need to deal with any areas of personal sin and negative influences, which is found in verse 8. And then thirdly, we need to rest in the realization that God has heard our prayer. Here's what I want you to remember today. God loves you. He cares about you. He hasn't given up on you. And don't you give up on yourself or on God.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hello. Welcome to the program. We are right now just going through, we're waiting for our guest to call in. We have Cassie Smedile of the RNC joining us. As we wait for her, I want to get to clip number 7. And we have, I didn't think we'd have time because we ran out of time in the first segment. But this is Ambassador Nikki Haley. Now, remember, she used to be a governor, and now she's the ambassador to the UN. And she has been superb as ambassador to the UN. She has taken foreign nations that are violators of human rights and really people who have no room to talk about America, but they've been sitting up talking about us on the UN Security Council. She has been a staunch defender of Israel. She's smacked those individuals down who would attack our ally in the Middle East. And above all those things, she's doing this in the Me Too era, which means as a woman, she should be getting extra credit for that. Now, I personally think that you should look at someone and hold them to a standard that is equal for all. So if it's a man, if it's a woman, whatever the job they're doing, they're either doing a good job or they're not. It's not good for a woman or good for a black person. It's just good. They're either doing a good job or they're not. And so when I hear people, talk about Nikki Haley, which is rare, the news media just acts like she doesn't exist, just as they did with Condoleezza Rice, who was also an exemplary person in her job when she was working in the Bush White House. It's pretty amazing that she's not getting more recognition. Like, why doesn't she have those rock star T-shirts where it's just 3 colors and, it's like her profile and all that stuff? Why do we not see that with her? She's killing it. She's doing a fantastic job. So here she is. She's talking about this portrayal of the UN laughter that ensued after Donald Trump cracked that little joke. She says the media has got this so wrong. That's number 7.
The media's got this so wrong. I deal with these leaders every single day. I know exactly how they think. Do they love America? No. Do they respect America? Now they do. When he said that, they love how honest he is, and it's not diplomatic, and they find it funny. I mean, when he goes and he is very truthful, they kind of are taken back by it. And
they're not used to it.
They're not used to it. But let me tell you, all day yesterday, they were falling over themselves to get a picture with him, to talk about how great his speech was, how strong it was. Whether he said good things about them or not, they love that he's honest with them. And they've never seen anything like it. And so there's a respect there. I saw that the media was trying to make it something disrespectful. That's not what it was. They love to be with him. That's the only time you'll see that entire chamber standing room on.
And so if they thought he was a joke or mentally incompetent or someone that couldn't hold his own, wouldn't they not show up? That's usually what people do. If they think you don't have anything of value to say, they just won't show up. Remember, we talked about that yesterday with Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 11/9. people didn't show up to watch that because first of all, they weren't interested. And second of all, considering the source and the previous documentaries, they could just turn their TVs on and get much fresher content than something he wrote or put together, years and years ago. I mean, it's just what it is. So when we're looking at what she just said and how the media would love to portray it as this big mock fest at the UN, when in reality, if you're mocking someone, you don't want your picture taken with them afterwards. You don't need to do anything more than get your laugh on and then, leave the space if you even show up. So it doesn't hold water. Of course, you have to listen to American Family Radio to get the true perspective on what's going on, because the mainstream media just has something else that they can hit the president with. And I think it's fine for them, again, attack on the issues, attack on, the economy if that's something you feel you can get somewhere on. Any of that stuff works. This present way of attacking him, where it's just all about his personal attributes, that doesn't fly. And I'm interested, obviously, in being the absolute, like, we should hold our elected officials accountable. I've talked about how I don't like the omnibus spending packages that have been going through that fund Planned Parenthood, and they really don't cut the budget, and it's just a spending free-for-all that's going on. But there's a lot for us to be really happy about with this presidency. And so we comment on the good, we comment on the bad, and we go forward from there. The president's spending a lot of time today with these world leaders, and he's creating relationships, and he's building on what happened last year at the UN General Assembly, and he's doing that. And remember, this is all happening in New York City on land that we as a country donated to the UN decades ago. And so they have their property here. It's largely funded by us. And when I say largely, we're the largest funder. So, we have a lot of skin in the game here. And I understand the movement to remove the UN, or, to extricate ourselves from it. But I also understand how important it is, while we're still a part of it and while we're still sending them so many billions of dollars, for us to be there and for us to make a positive impact, as only America can do. As only America can do. So let's go to our guest. We have Cassie Smedile, RNC National Spokeswoman. Thank you so much, Cassie, for joining the show today.
Hey, Stacey, great to be with you.
Hey, it's good to talk to you. I'm clearly disturbed by the events of the day, and we have so much to talk about. Yeah. Obviously, we can talk about the UN General Assembly and all of the inroads that the president is making in reorienting our kind of world stature, our posture within the UN. Nikki Haley has done a fantastic job, and the president is kind of capping all of that off with whipped cream, nuts, and a cherry as he speaks to them and makes them laugh and kind of builds all of these relationships. Well, that's what he's doing these couple of days here.
That's right. And I think they're not quite used to hearing an American president who comes here and touts the great achievements of not just this administration, but of our country. I think they're used to the days of Barack Obama, who would come and tout all of these countries' achievements, whether friend or foe. And I love Nikki Haley this morning. I caught her on Fox and Friends saying, I deal with these folks all the time, and they aren't used to having a president come in and speak honestly about his own country. And so that's why they're sort of chuckling, because that doesn't sound normal to them. But I love that our president, regardless of where he is, never misses an opportunity to talk about the greatness that is America. And so whether that's something that gives them a chuckle or something they're not used to, I'm glad he doesn't shy away from doing it.
I think it's great. You know this because you speak not just on television, but nationally you speak. You're a spokesperson. That's your actual title. You're a communicator. One of the best modes of setting the stage for a conversation is to intentionally or unintentionally crack a joke so that your audience laughs. So whether or not they're on the same page as you or they agree with what you're going to talk about, they've laughed and the tension is gone, and now they're open and receptive to hearing what you have to say.
That's right. I love how when he noticed they were sort of chuckling, he acknowledged it. And I think that shows that somebody who's really good at being in touch with not just his audience, but in a conversation. He acknowledges it. He sort of smirks and laughs himself, says, I wasn't expecting that response, but that's okay. It's true. And they all laugh more. And now, okay, we've kind of broken the ice. And now you're ready to hear everything I'm about to say. I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm going headstrong into talking about the achievements of my administration, the achievements of our country, and why if you're with us, we're going to be a great friend to you. But if you're not with us and you don't want to treat us fairly, that's going to be a problem for you. And I think he delivered that message loud and clear and very well.
I thought, so first of all, he had a difficult speech to give. Now that we've heard it, we know that he didn't pull any punches. He was very clear. He laid out only 2 options. Instead of 1,000 options or having it your way like at Burger King, it's 2 options. You can be our friend, and you will love it. You will love our friendship. It will be so good to you. It'll be the best friendship you've ever had. To quote Donald Trump, it will be outstanding. It will be huge.
Sounds just like him.
Yeah, it will be awesome. Or you cannot be our friend, and it will not be good for you. It'll be so horrible for you. You'll wish you'd never been born. You just don't want to be there, but it's up to you. And then from there, he really, when I say he touted America, I think after 8 years of Barack Obama apologizing for this country and really highlighting anything that was wrong in this country, like other countries don't have problems, I think they really were thinking, what did he say ever? Did he say it's the best they've done ever? They were surprised. They were like, oh my goodness, that's bold.
I know, and yet we're over here going, yeah, that's right. That sounds right. I'm feeling pretty good about things. And I think it's right. They're not used to hearing it. And, you can tell that he has a good rapport personally with a lot of these leaders. And I think that's because even countries, I think of Emmanuel Macron from France, that they clearly have a great rapport. I think they're friends. But he's very clear, too, about saying we are friends. Our countries are great allies, our longest allies. But we got to make sure that we're still having a mutually beneficial relationship and friendship. And so that's why I'm taking a hard look at these things, these agreements that we've been engaged in, because I think for too long, people have just said, oh, France, they're our friends, they're fine, as opposed to saying, now, wait a minute, does this still work as well for both sides? And I think Macron gets that. It's interesting to me that people would say, how dare he threaten our relationship with Canada or with France or you name it. And yet these leaders actually seem to be saying, okay, fair enough. We're going to keep talking to you. They don't back away from us. They need us. They love us. I think they like President Trump, and they like the results he's getting. And I think about this got barely any coverage, but last week up in Canada, people were telling President Trudeau, hey, you need to get back in there and finish our part of the North American Free Trade Agreement deal. We don't want Mexico getting everything. So get in there, even though he wanted to stomp his feet and walk away from the president because he didn't like his tactics or his personality, whatever. And it barely got any coverage, but he's really on the hot seat up there to get a deal done because people know it is far better for you when you are on America's side and America is on your side.
And really just to be in the deal. If you don't have a deal at all, Cassie, are they even at the table? They're not at the table. So Mexico's at the table, and almost every other country on the planet's at the table, countries that matter, countries that have currency that trades internationally. And then there's Canada sitting off to the side with their 3,000% dairy and all that. I mean, it must be some good milk, but that's not going to pass muster when Canadians want American products. And we Americans, we can have Canadian products, or we can not have Canadian products. We have Amazon. We'll have whatever we want. We'll get it from somewhere. So I think it's interesting also, Cassie, that, so I guess we all have had a relationship like this, or maybe we still do have one where it's a business relationship and the person themselves is not maybe our favorite person, or maybe, the chemistry is not quite there, but it's the business side that you want. So you're willing to, work with this person regardless of their personality, because you need to do the business, it's business that needs to be done. So you're not going to marry this person. You're not maybe going to have a book club with this person or do a weekly luncheon with this person, but you're going to do business with them as long as you can make deals that work. And I think it's really short-sighted and kind of immature for people to say, well, we can't change our deal with Canada or Germany or Great Britain because, they won't be our friend anymore. They won't deal with us anymore. They're going to deal with us. They're going to deal with the #1 economy on the face of this planet. They're going to deal with the chief exporter of culture and entertainment on this planet. There's no way they're not going to deal with us. The question is, what kind of deal will it be? And this is a businessman. He's just really doing the thing he's been trained to do for 40 plus years in the private sector. And I'm so grateful that he's bringing it. Like, can I just sit in on a couple of the negotiation meetings? I just want to sit in and listen and just hear how it's done. Like, I think people should really offer some respect in this area, because they're so critical in other areas where the president is not political and he doesn't present himself as a traditional Republican. How about giving him some credit in the business side? He's really doing well here.
I could not agree with you more. I know I want to sit in there and take notes. I guess we can just read his book, but I think all of that goes to, you talk about people say, oh, personality, I may not like you, but from a business perspective, I'll work with you. Conversely, we had Barack Obama for 8 years, who was Mr. Celebrity and Mr. Diplomat, and we got horrible deals, or horrible deals persisted under his watch. And now what you see with President Trump, I think, again, this was Nikki Haley saying, they may not like us, but they respect us. Mm-hmm. And that's all we need. We're not out there to be BFFs and get Miss Congeniality awards from the world. We are out there to fight for Americans, but America first. And that's not to say that we're sticking our head in the sand and ignoring the world around us. That's what liberals want us to think that means, or want to say that means. That means that we're just going out there and making sure that our interests are being taken care of. And the good news for the rest of the world is that, generally speaking, our interests are of mutual benefit to so many of our friends and future friends around the world. So it's advantageous for everyone to come to the table and work with us.
It is. So we have about a minute left, and I just want to get your quick take on whether or not Chairman Grassley should continue to entertain these ridiculous claims that are being made against Judge Kavanaugh, a very honorable man who is being smeared. Should he just hold the vote and ignore all of this, or is he obligated to follow through on this?
Well, I think first, Chairman Grassley has done as good of a job as he possibly can to try and make a fair and open process that's fair to both sides. But here's what we know is that Democrats, even Mika Brzezinski said this, the Democrats are continually moving the goalposts. There's nothing we can do that's going to make them say, that Chairman Grassley, he really did this the right way. No, that's not the point. The whole point they're bringing this up is to wreak havoc amongst the process. They don't really have a genuine interest in getting it to an outcome or getting all the facts. They just want to cause hay. So I think Chairman Grassley we should go ahead with the planned hearing tomorrow. We should go ahead with the vote on Friday, and I appreciate that Mitch McConnell is going to work his wonders with the Senate clock. He's always very good at working the procedure of the Senate and get this full vote done as quickly as possible. I think, I try not to spend too much time on Twitter. It's just not good for your health. But I do see even people that you would naturally assume to be on the other side, on the Democrat side for this, or just generally on the side of we have to hear every allegation in full and investigations and what have you, are going, there's just something about this timing. This just seems highly coordinated. I think we're getting away from truth here, and this is all politics. And I think that's telling, and I think more people need to be talking about that.
Thank you so much, Cassie. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Cassie Smedile, RNC National Spokeswoman. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Stacey. Same to you.
Okay, and we'll be back with more right after this.
Physical activity is the new trend. It's not a bad thing unless it has brought a sense of vanity in your life. 2 years ago, I was not happy with the number on the scale, nor how I looked. I've never been a huge person, but I was, as the old folks would say, healthy. I joined a gym, gained a personal trainer, even changed some of my eating habits. The Lord checked me one day and in my spirit said, "Why are you disgusted with yourself? Be healthy, take care of the temple I've loaned you, but do it because you want to honor this body, which is your responsibility while on this earth." I said, "You better let me know, Abba." Psalms 139 verse 14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." 15 pounds down, I know that even if I was to never look like Serena Williams with those nice framed, worked out arms, I am wonderfully made in his image, and so are you. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hey,
Hey, have you called in to share your testimony about how God has been a blessing in your life? If not, what are you waiting for? Share-a-thon is almost here. Stop whatever it is that you're doing and call 877-327-5647. God is too good for us to just sit there and not tell others about his goodness and his mercy. Simply call 877-327-5647. We can't wait to hear from you.
We need you to call your senators today. Tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood.
This is Fox on Justice. The Supreme Court's new term begins on Monday with or without Brett Kavanaugh. The controversies over his nomination not likely to be resolved by the first Monday in October. And so the court would convene with 8 justices, not 9. Already, the Kavanaugh situation has had an effect. Before they formally convene, the justices meet to discuss what cases they might take up in the coming term. But several potential cases that were originally on the list to be considered were pulled, to be discussed later, presumably when the court has its full complement of 9 justices. These cases include one about workplace bias based on sexual orientation, one on solitary confinement in prison, and kneeling in prayer at a school football game. The court will announce the first batch of cases it will hear on Thursday. That's the same day Judge Kavanaugh goes back before the Senate Judiciary Committee to respond to allegations of long-ago sexual assault. With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Let's have some calls. We have our call lines, which are open for you at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. We are, I talked to you a little bit in the very first segment about Beto O'Rourke lying about the DUI from 20 years ago. And he's gotten 4 Pinocchios from one of the rating agencies that listens to media and you know, tells, hey, this person's lying, this person's telling the truth. It's this is a liberal organization, so you would think that they would, you know, toe the line for O'Rourke, but apparently DUI, lying about that's just a bit too much. It's number 2.
I gave 4 Pinocchios today to Beto O'Rourke, who's a candidate in Texas Senate.
For what?
He was in a debate with Senator Ted Cruz over the weekend, and there's a drunk driving conviction that he was involved in about almost exactly 20 years ago. And recently the police reports came out, and they showed that he tried to leave the scene of the accident. So he was asked about that in the debate, and he flatly said, I did not try to leave the scene of the accident. Now, you have his memory 20 years later, or you have police reports that document in 2 different places a witness saying that O'Rourke did try to leave the scene of the accident, and that the witness actually had to prevent him from leaving the scene of the accident. So, you know, you weigh those 2 things, and I'm going to go with the police reports.
So is that someone that you want representing you in Congress? Voters will have to decide. That's really it, isn't it? And why lie about it? Why not just tell the truth? Hey, I did try to leave. I was drunk. That's what was going on. He was driving under the influence, had an accident, tried to leave. I mean, you almost kind of just respect the whole, you know, if someone can just be frank, if they can just say, you know, hey, this is what happened. It was this long ago, you know, yada, yada, yada. Voters get that. People get that. At least, maybe I'm different. Maybe I'm off on the side by myself with this, but I get the whole admission and explanation better than lying and then, you know, that whole bit. Let's go to Mary in Kansas. Thank you so much for calling into the show today, Mary.
Thank you. I am a 66-year-old woman that's
really a hillbilly, and I've never talked like this, but Stacey on the right, you rock, girl, because when you gave that speech about standing up for America and what all the people that don't want to stand up for it and how they reacted and what you said, I feel like American Family Radio, Urban Family, should put that on the radio at least once a day and remind America what we should be thanking for. And, girl, thank you so much, and God bless you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary. Thanks for listening. And I really appreciate that. Maybe my producer will clip that out and we can save it for when I'm feeling low. I tell you what, I believe it. And mainly it's because I've been all over the world. Mary, if you ever went to Saudi Arabia and watched women walk in order of precedence behind their husband while wearing those black curtains, you get back to America and you will literally kiss that tarmac because it is a privilege. We are so free here. And I know it's the stuff I hate, Mary. It's the stuff I hate. I hate seeing women walk around with their rear ends hanging out of their shorts and, a bra as a shirt. But, we have the freedom to do that. It doesn't mean we should, but we have the freedom to do that as opposed to covering ourselves up with curtains no matter what we have on, and our husbands marrying anybody they want to, 5, 6 women, and us having to put up with it. We have rights here. We are full citizens here along with the men. And it's just, we just need to love the one we're with, which is America. So thank you so much for calling in today. I'm not saying what I say because I know people sometimes will email me and say, well, they pay you a lot to say that kind of stuff. Really, it's irrelevant how much I'm getting paid. What is important is that these are my views, and I had them before I ever worked here, and they're views that stand the test of time. You don't swear to support and defend the Constitution of this country and go abroad and go around the world and see our service people snuffed out. I was on active duty when the Khobar Towers were bombed. It was a terror attack. And the Khobar Towers are in Saudi Arabia, and they're on a military installation that's owned by the United States. And we were stationed there, and I was supposed to be there on that second rotation. So the second rotation was over the summer. Well, I talked to my boss at work, and at the time, my boyfriend, who is now my husband, he was on active duty too. We lived in the same dorm. He was on the 3rd floor. I was on the 2nd floor. And my husband, he was my boyfriend then, he said, Stacey, if you go on the rotation you're scheduled to go on, you're going to be there when it's like 115 at night. It's super hot in Saudi Arabia in the summer. And he said, what you might want to do is if there's anybody who wants to swap with you, or if there becomes an opening in the next rotation in the spring from February to, 90 days past that, go ahead and switch. And my boss said the same thing. He was like, oh, it's going to be hot when you go. And so I told him, I said, if there's another slot open for me to go in February, I'll go. And my husband and I, we were dating back then. We had all these plans for the summer that we were going to do fun stuff in Florida. And he was like, just, see if you can switch. So I did. I listened to my then boyfriend and my boss, and there was another slot that came open, and I went in February. And so I did my 90 days plus 2 days travel there and back. We went through Iceland, and I came back. And I hadn't been home a month before the Khobar Towers bombing happened. The guy who lived across the hall from me, I don't even remember his name. He was new to the unit. He had just gotten there. He'd gone on the rotation. He was in Khobar Towers when it was bombed, and he died. And so they had to put, they put a little notice on his door, not for anybody to, try to enter it or anything. And eventually some of his family members came and, took his personal effects out of his room. And that was it for him. He died in the Khobar Towers bombing. And so I don't know why, things worked out the way that they did, that I ended up not going on that rotation. But I remember being in Saudi Arabia on command sponsorship on active duty, and I couldn't have my collarbone showing, my wrist bone, or my ankle bone. But I could go outside with my head uncovered. If I was driving a vehicle, I could drive it off base, but when I was driving it, I had to have on my military uniform and I had to have on a hat because back then women couldn't drive in Saudi Arabia. They only won that right this year in 2018. And I was there in the 90s, 96, I think it was, 1995, 1996. And I drove while I was there. I can't tell you how many times I would pull up at the stoplight driving in Saudi Arabia and some man would look over as if like, I know you're not driving, and I would just look straight ahead and keep on driving to my destination because I had a green ID card and I was an American citizen. And I couldn't go crazy and show my collarbone or my wrist bone because the religious police would beat me because I would happen to be there during Ramadan. But the fact is, none of those Saudi Arabian men who would have beaten a woman senseless or stoned her to death for driving could lay a hand on me because I was an American citizen. And it was a shock to them that I knew how to drive. But, of course, I've been driving since I was 18, and that's late in America. Most Americans drive from 15 on. And if you live out in the country, you start driving at 12, man or woman. And so that's just one example of what is the truth about being an American. The truth is a black woman with a high school education can drive, own property, start businesses. I can do anything I want to here. I can go from $0 to $1 billion like Oprah Winfrey. I can do what I'm doing now. I can sit behind a microphone and get broadcast all over the country and live stream all over the world. Or I could stay home and be a stay-at-home mom and never work a day in my life because I got a good husband who'll take care of me. You can do anything in this country. You can choose to be a Christian or any other religion you want or no religion at all. No one can come and beat you with a billy club because your collarbone is showing or because you have your hair out in public. And that's just one example of the atrocities that women undergo across the globe. Yet here in this country, we have all of these so-called feminists who are really just men haters who want to make it seem as if being an American woman is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And if I could, I'd take them on a field trip to Saudi Arabia and I'd leave them there for 94 days with nothing but a handbook to tell them how they could behave and see if they made it out alive. I guarantee you it would be a difficult proposition because most of these feminists, they don't understand yes from no. They don't know how to follow instructions, and they certainly don't think anyone can tell them what to do. And if they showed up, if they woke up one day in Saudi Arabia, the rude awakening would be their last rude awakening. And those are the kind of countries that exist across the world. Yet we're here in America, walking and breathing free, shopping, going in the screw aisle at Lowe's, and there's like 4 billion screws in that aisle, metric and American, and you could just go find a screw to fit anything that you want. You can find, I think it's 166 different varieties of spaghetti sauce at most grocery stores, over 200 varieties of salsa. I mean, the bounty of this country knows no end. And so those God-given rights that are enshrined in our Constitution that we get to partake of, I just don't have the time. And I know it's not a Christian concept to have no patience, but I'm just being real with you here. I have no patience for people who don't love this country. And you don't have to love it or worship it. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about idolatry, but I'm talking about just being cognizant of how grateful you should be that you're an American citizen. Even if you're living in poverty, you're still in the top 5% of what people across the world are living in. If you listened to our program last week with Dr. Alex McFarland, and he talked about 1 billion people on this planet, they can't turn a switch and get water. Most of us have more than 2 bathrooms. There are multiple rooms in your house where you can go and press a button or move something in one direction and clean potable water comes out, and it's unlimited. No limits on how much you can use, unless you're in communist California, and I'm sorry about that, but I mean, mostly this country's still awesome. So I don't have any tolerance for it, and we shouldn't have any tolerance for it. There should be a place where, as an American, you just acknowledge, yeah, we got problems. Yeah, we have some things we really need to work on. Yeah, we have a lot of godlessness going on here. Yeah, people are going to people, but man, I sure wouldn't want to be a citizen of Sudan. I sure wouldn't want to be a citizen of Saudi Arabia. Sitting up, almost 51% of our citizens are overweight. I mean, we got it too good. It's too good for our own selves. And it just is what it is. So let's go to Kathy in Illinois. Thank you so much for calling the show, Kathy. Hey there. Welcome to the program.
Hi. I just wanted to say I love your program.
Thank you.
And honestly, I wasn't going to listen to it for a long time, but I felt like God told me to listen to it, and I did, and I absolutely love it.
Aw, thank you.
I love our president. I love the United States of America, and I love the judge that's going to be confirmed here real shortly.
Amen, Kathy. Amen. I'm with you.
People forget that they said Trump wasn't going to win, but God put Trump in there. See, and you can't look at the man. his success, I know I just love to hear how he boasts. Mm-hmm. But at least he boasts about our country. He loves our country. That's what I really love about him. He loves our country. And if them Republicans would just have their vote, God will put the man in there. Mm-hmm. He's got enough prayer and everything, and that's what it takes. And we just need to pray that this whole thing be exposed. I think the ladies are being paid personally, but that's my personal. And I don't know if they could just go have a vote. I would have a vote. If I could, I'd be in there. Yeah. They're wussy.
I hope they're listening. I hope at least some of these people are listening to it, because you're not the only one, Kathy, and you're right. If they just have the vote, regardless of what's happening, they'll put a stop to all of these shenanigans from the Democrats, and that's what should happen. Thank you for listening and for calling in today. We have just enough time for one more caller. George in Mississippi. Hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for calling.
All right. You're hitting on some good stuff. What it is that this country is something special. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks just don't understand how special it is unless they do travel. And the problem is they don't travel, they don't read, and they don't pay attention to certain things. Because if you look in, I think it's the last verse of, Isaiah 44, in the first 13 verses of Isaiah 45, is a guy named Cyrus. He rebuilt the wall in Jerusalem because God touched him. And the Lord also said, I'm doing this. He called him his anointed. He was a pagan king. Now, the fact is that he said, I'm using him even though he don't know me. Mm. So that's the last verse in 44 Isaiah, first 13 verses of Isaiah 45. And then Donald Trump. He'll use whomever. Look at Paul. Paul was killing Christians, and he wrote 3/4 of the New Testament. That's how God chooses people. He don't choose them the way we choose them.
He chooses people like us, flawed individuals, sinners, people in need of a Savior. He can use anybody. He can use anybody. And so what can we do? Pray for those who are elected in authority over us. Amen to that, George. Thank you for calling the show. I would read that, but I hear the music. If you're signing off right now, God bless you from the heartland, and we'll be with you tomorrow. If you're hanging around after news and information from onenewsnow.com, we'll talk some more. Stay there.
AFA Action Alerts. When you subscribe, we'll notify you once or twice a week about a critical issue facing our country. AFA Action Alerts have been very successful in influencing legislation, as well as getting positive results from America's Fortune 500 companies. Subscribe to your AFA Action Alerts today. Go to afa.net and click on the Resources tab.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. Another woman has come forward that swears she witnessed Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh engage in sexually abusive behavior toward girls back in the early 1980s. This just one day before Kavanaugh's hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee to testify about a different sexual assault allegation. Fox's Peter Ducey reports.
This third Kavanaugh accuser is named Julie Swetnick, who says she holds active security clearances, attended a different high school than Kavanaugh, and is represented by Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, who tweeted this declaration from her. Quote, in approximately 1982, I became the victim of one of these gang or train rapes where Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh were present. Shortly after the incident, I shared what had transpired with at least 2 other people. During the incident, I was incapacitated without my consent and unable to fight off the boys raping me. I believe I was drugged using Quaaludes or something similar placed in what I was drinking.
President Trump slammed Michael Avenatti, the attorney representing the third woman and Stormy Daniels, as a third-rate lawyer who is good at making false accusations. President Trump met with the Prime Minister of Japan today for a meeting on trade policy.
We've agreed today to start trade negotiations between the United States and Japan. This was something that, for various reasons over the years, Japan was unwilling to do, and now they are willing to do. So we're very happy about that, and I'm sure that we'll come to a satisfactory conclusion.
The deal follows a separate announcement with South Korea and would reportedly cover auto and food imports. There may be another meeting between President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Fox's Rich Edson reports from the State Department.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is returning to North Korea. The State Department says the secretary has accepted an invitation from Kim Jong-un to travel next month to Pyongyang. Officials say they'll work to prepare a second summit between President Trump and Chairman Kim. Last month, Pompeo canceled what would have been his 4th trip to Pyongyang, citing a lack of progress on North Korea surrendering its nuclear weapons program. The State Department says Kim has agreed to finish dismantling his weapons by early 2021. In the meantime, the Trump administration says it fully expects other countries to enforce sanctions against North Korea. At the State Department, Rich Edson, Fox News.
Snapchat is letting people register to vote from the app in the run-up to the midterm elections. U.S. users over the age of 18 will start to receive a register-to-vote link. Clicking on that link will take them to a TurboVote mobile site to register. In addition, Snapchat plans to send a team message to the 80% of its American users who are of voting age. According to Snapchat, relevant news stories will also link to the registration page. Police in Arizona are cracking down on some drivers who are sneaking into the HOV lane. Fox's Jim McKay explains.
The Arizona Department of Public Safety was boasting on Twitter that they had caught another driver in an HOV lane who was driving with a fake baby. That's right, a 48-year-old woman was driving in Santan, Arizona with a baby doll strapped in a car seat to make it appear that there was more than one passenger. This isn't the first time someone has tried this either. Earlier this year, officers stopped someone in Arizona who had a full mannequin in the front seat. The Department of Public Safety says these are all HOV violations, and you can get a fine along with a traffic citation. They say some 4,000 HOV violation citations are handed out in the state each year. Jim McKay, Fox News.
And in this case, what's good for the hen isn't good for the rooster. At least in Los Angeles County, the county has voted to limit the number of roosters a person can keep. County supervisors have decided a person with a large lot can have up to 10 roosters, while licensed animal care facilities can keep as many as 25 around. The law puts no such limits on hens. The limit on roosters is aimed at reducing complaints about noise and odor. It also is aimed at cracking down on illegal chicken fights. That is American Family News for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com. Thanks for listening.
Just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day, Lion Chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
America will always choose independence and cooperation over global governance.
He's redoing all of these negotiations, so for the first time, Americans aren't suffering. It's fair for America, and the countries know that it's unfair. They know it has to change. They don't like it, but they know he's right.
The truth is, I've never sexually assaulted anyone in high school or otherwise.
We did not receive from the documents that they sent in any information or the results of the lie detector test that had been mentioned in the Washington Post, and we didn't receive the notes from the therapist that had also been referenced in the Washington Post.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Oh, yeah. We're here. Hour 2 of the program. And guess what? We have Kyle Drennen, Senior News Analyst for Media Research Center. He's coming on in a couple minutes. Well, end of the show. He's going to be in the last segment. He's got some new data on how many minutes have been spent allowing Judge Kavanaugh's supporters to voice and air their opinions in comparison to the accusations that have been leveled against him, many of which have been found to be unsubstantiated. And so, isn't it just so convenient that someone who used to hold a security clearance and also told 2 people, but not the police, about this so-called, rape gang, that this person now is coming forward? Person number 3? What did I tell you last week? I told you last week, I said, they're going to Herman Cain this man. They're going to bring out they'll just keep trotting out accusers until he finally says, you know what, forget it. Until they just get tired of being laid out. And we got to pray. We got to keep praying. This family has to be able to stand, because this is one of those things where if they can make it through this, then the work that he's going to do on the other side of this, on the Supreme Court of the United States, we have to see the proportionality of it. How do we know he's going to do great things on the Supreme Court? Look at the opposition. Have you ever had this happen to you where you want to do something and you set your mind to it, you pray over it, and you're pretty sure it's what God has for you, and then all of a sudden, attacks rush in. Everything starts going wrong in the area that you're actually hoping to make an accomplishment, and also in other areas. Things start going wrong in your family. Things start breaking in your house. You're like, what is going on? It's like everything's breaking loose in here. It's an attack of the enemy. This is a full frontal assault on what it means to be an American, innocent until proven guilty, what it means to practice law as opposed to practicing the worship of people, what it means to really choose someone and for the president to have the right to decide who he would like to put on the Supreme Court. Imagine if the Republicans had launched attacks like these on a Democratic nominee. Just imagine if people had gone digging into Sonia Sotomayor or Elena Kagan's background. They're both single, never been married. Imagine. Come on now. I don't have to spell it out for you. You know the Republicans, if they were down and dirty and just anything goes and they were willing to slosh around a whole bunch of mud, they could have found a few things, I'm sure. But instead, they were just like, these are his nominees. They asked tough questions. I mean, the questions were tough. And then they said, we're going to vote to confirm. This is his choice. He gets to decide. When these people retire during his presidency, it's his decision. And stop talking to me about Merrick Garland. I just don't care about that anymore. Like people tell me, whenever I say something about Barack Obama, somebody will say to me, well, the thing is, that's in the past. It doesn't matter what President Obama did, whether it was legal or illegal. It doesn't matter because it's in the past, which is totally not true. If that's the case, why does it matter that this happened? Why does it matter that these people are bringing these allegations forward if it's in the past and nothing that Obama did matter? But see, it's a double standard. That's not the truth. So speaking of the truth, there are a few things that everybody in the media has acted as if are commonly available to those who are involved in this process, namely the Senate Judiciary Committee and Judge Kavanaugh's legal counsel and the legal counsel representing Blasey Ford. And that is the lie detector results and therapy notes. Now, I know some of the therapy notes have been disseminated through the media, but the original documents that would be, I guess, the copies of the original documents, what have you, the source documents for the accusation have not been forwarded to Kavanaugh's attorney. Here she is on television talking about that on mainstream media, and the shock face of the hostess was worth it to watch the clip. It was worth it for me. I needed that in my day today, and it totally was right at the right spot. It's number 5.
As you know, those are statements that were made relatively recently, and sadly, this is an allegation from almost 36 years ago, and there are There was, at the time, no report, which is understandable, but the first time these allegations came to light, as far as we know from reading the reports in the media, Dr. Blasey told her therapist and told her husband. They announced that there were notes and that there had been a lie detector test, but as I understand it, they did not turn any of those over to the Senate committee, even though they were requested. So the information that would have shown what she said at the very first time when she revealed these allegations have not been turned over to the Senate.
So here's what we can do. We can call Senator Grassley's office and demand a stop be put to these attacks and this man, and that they have a confirmation vote. Stop entertaining the madness. The number is 202-224-3744. 202-224-3744. Make that phone call. Let Chairman Grassley know that the constituents are not just watching, but we're all, our dander is up and we are all like, we're upset. We have our little finger out and we're like, what are we waiting on? That is what we are all saying right now. It's in unison. I can't tell you how many messages I've gotten. People are like, what are we waiting on? Everyone's saying it at the same time. They're saying it while they eat. They're saying it while they're driving down the road. They're saying, there's like, what are we waiting on? In addition to saying that, make sure and pray and call and pray and call and pray and call. Let's see this thing through. I had someone kind of mention to me that, well, you know, we're fighting and we may be fighting, but the fight is, it's a prayer battle. And I know that sounds a little weird because, you know, these are happening in real time. And obviously I want Chairman Grassley, and I don't think he's doing badly. I mean, considering who he's working with and the other Democrats on the panel, but I do think there's a moment where you say, okay, that's enough. We've all been there as parents. We've all been there in relationships. You say that's enough. And at that point, you're done with the nonsense. You want to just, you know, let's have something substantial go on here and let's make some decisions and move on. And that's what needs to happen here. They're going to continue to have accusers come out of the woodwork. So the question really is, do you have the desire to go on? The Democrats can keep bringing accusers forward until the cows come home, as my grandma used to say, or until 2020, which they'd be happy to do that. They'd be oh so happy to do that. But don't we have a Supreme Court that's coming into session on Monday? Have the vote. And then make sure people know, you know, yeah, the midterms aren't coming around by accident. Have the vote. Make something happen. So the Kavanaugh attorney had a couple more things to say, and then I want to go over this. One of the best journalists out there, Kimberly Strassel, she had this thread where she explained about Ramirez's allegations and how they've been unsubstantiated, and how Ramirez is actually giving the Senate Judiciary Committee the runaround because she promised to provide some information to them and she just won't give it to them. So first, let's listen to the remainder of Kavanaugh's attorney, and then I'm going to give you this info because this is what you need to be armed with just to bolster the realization. We all know this is a bunch of garbage, but the facts support that it's a bunch of garbage, so we might as well know those as well. It's number 6.
As far as I know, last night when the information was sent in, we all received a request from the Senate to provide any information, and we did not receive from the documents that they sent in any information or the results of the lie detector test that had been mentioned in the Washington Post, and we didn't receive the notes from the therapist that had also been referenced in the Washington Post. And of course, that's very important because apparently in those notes, there's a differing story about how many people were present at the party. There's no of Judge Kavanaugh. And so all that information would be very important to determine, you know, whether there's any corroboration.
So this is from last night bedtime. Kimberly Strassel sends out this series of tweets, and she has it in a thread so you can see it. Thousands of retweets. It's really, it's fantastic information. As I was reading over it right like in the middle of the night, well, it was more like 6:30. I was reading and I'm thinking, what? So, you know, Deborah Ramirez is the second accuser. And she says, so Deborah Ramirez's attorney, John Clune, went on CNN's Anderson Cooper 360, and this was last night. In the interview, he accuses the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Republicans of game playing by majority party with regards to the testimony that Ramirez wants to provide. But emails have gone back and forth, and they're a part of the public record, and Kimberly Strassel read them all. So she says the first majority email goes on Sunday, September 23rd, 2 days ago, hours from when New Yorker story runs at 7:43 p.m. It goes to attorneys, notes the story, asks when Ramirez is available for an interview. She's determined to, so the senators who sent this email said, we're determined to take her statement and investigate further. So this idea that the Republicans don't want to investigate or that they don't want to know what these accusers are talking about is utter lies, okay? At 10:30 p.m., a Ramirez attorney says she'll get back. The attorney says, get back. It's actually a man, John Clune. But then on Monday at 3 p.m., Ramirez attorney says she wants the FBI to investigate, not senators. She might be open to being interviewed in person, though only on appropriate terms that she sets. Attorney suggests that they call and discuss it on Tuesday. And remember, today's Wednesday, so bear with me here. So a few minutes later, the majority says, thanks for replying. Republicans now. The Republicans are asking, can Ramirez provide evidence? Or do you have a statement that you're willing to provide? In other words, can your attorney type up a statement from you to provide to us so we can begin the process of investigating your claim? She says, the attorney says, well, we want to have a phone call about it, but not right now. Remember, this is more than 24 hours after the initial communication. Majority says, before next steps, the phone call, do you have anything that you'd like to submit? This is the third time that the Republicans, all men on the committee, are asking this woman, Ramirez, through her attorney, do you have any evidence or testimony that you'd like to provide? Give us something, please. We saw your story in the New Yorker. We want to investigate. This evening, she says, attorneys refer to the New Yorker article as evidence. An article about something you told somebody is not evidence, but on we go. She demands an investigation, says, the attorney says, my client won't talk before more details of whatever process you're contemplating are made known. This is still Monday night. So the majority instantly replies back to this email that they welcome any evidence in form of an email or letter to the chairman or ranking member or same from counsel, a statement to committee investigators. This is the fourth time they've asked. The next morning, Tuesday, September 25th, Ramirez attorney ignores request again, but says since he hasn't had confirmation of the phone call, he is now unavailable. Now we should talk at the end of the day. What does this sound like to you? I'll go on. Kimberly Strassel's 8th tweet. She says, majority responds again that before next steps, the phone call, they need to know if Ramirez has evidence other than that of the New Yorker article. Because anybody can say, I have a story for you, and call a reporter. I can do that. I can call a reporter at the end of this program, and I can say, I have a story for you. And that person would most likely say, what is it? Or can we meet so I can record this? Can I record this? They would take my story down, and if they really trust me, which I know a few reporters who do, they would then run with that story. Would that story then be evidence of something? Or would that be a story that someone wrote about a phone call or meeting that we had? Which is it? Because that's material to whether or not a person believes that any old person can say this happened to me and that's evidence, or if you need legitimate evidence from other sources before something can be called evidence. I could get two people I know to agree with the story that I'm telling, and that reporter could write about that. Would that be evidence? So the fifth ask, the majority responds again before next steps, the call. They need to know if Ramirez has evidence. This is the fifth question. Democrat staff now intervenes with email apologizing for the majority's preconditions and offers to put her attorneys in touch with the FBI. We'll be back with more after this.
Maybe you've been hearing the messages from Preborn asking listeners to join together to help save babies' lives through ultrasound, and you're not sure how to respond. Here's the story of one woman who took that step.
I heard about Mission Preborn just before December of last year and asked my husband if we could give at least $140. Just last week we received our packet. My husband came in the house and He was telling me, this is our preborn packet, the ultrasounds. I started crying without even seeing them. Not only were there 5 babies, but one of the moms was having twins. We were just elated for that.
For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and you'll receive a story and a picture of babies' lives that were spared. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your sponsorship goes to saving babies. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Last week I talked about the difference between the terms liberal and leftist. I wanted to revisit that discussion because I found that it helps explain what is happening in the political scene. The other day I had someone say that she doesn't even think there's a Democratic Party anymore. I think what she meant was it doesn't look anything like the political party she remembers when she was growing up. Yes, there have always been liberals in the Democrat Party, but now the left dominates the party leadership. The 2016 party platform is radically different from what it was in 2000. By contrast, the Republican Party platforms of 2000 and 2016 are very similar. Dennis Prager mentions other examples of the difference between a liberal and a leftist. Take the subject of capitalism. He says liberals have always been pro-capitalism, though they've often wanted government to play a bigger role in the economy. Leftists oppose capitalism are eagerly promoting socialism. Liberals have had a love of Western civilization and taught it at most universities. They were the promoters of the liberal arts and the fine arts. In fact, one of the most revered liberals in American history was President Franklin Roosevelt, who talked about the need to protect Western civilization and even Christian civilization. Today, Western civilization classes are rarely, if ever, taught in the university. That's because leftists don't believe Western civilization is superior to any other civilization. Leftists label people who attempt to defend Western values as racist and accuse them of promoting white supremacy. And attempts to promote religious liberty are dismissed as thinly disguised attacks on the LGBT community. Liberals and leftists are different. It is important to understand the difference if you're to understand what is happening in our world today. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Universal 1440, Unbroken, Path to Redemption, the rest of World War II hero Louis Zamperini's true story, now playing, rated PG-13.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We believe that when nations respect the rights of their neighbors and defend the interests of their people, they can better work together to secure the blessings of safety, prosperity, and peace. Each of us here today is the emissary of a distinct culture, a rich history, and a people bound together by ties of memory, tradition, and the values that make our homelands like nowhere else on earth. That is why America will always choose independence and cooperation over global governance, control, and domination. I honor the right of every nation in this room to pursue its own customs, beliefs, and traditions. The United States will not tell you how to live or work or worship. We only ask that you honor our sovereignty in return.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're asking, but whether you do it or not, we're sovereign. Our nation is sovereign. We have self-rule and self-determination, and we appreciate your comments, but we really don't have time to pay attention to them. Your comments about how we should run our country, how about you run your own country? You know, have you ever met someone that's like that, or had someone come tell you, you know what you need to do, and you're looking at them, you're like, you know, you're a hot mess to be telling somebody what they need to do. Why don't you worry about yourself? That is one of my favorite little memes from a few years ago, when the little girl is in the back seat and she's a toddler and she's trying to buckle her seatbelt, and the mom comes back because it's taken a while, and she's trying to help, and the little girl says, no. She smacks her mom's hand away. She says, Mommy, worry about yourself. Worry about yourself. Worry about yourself. It's just the best. Now, obviously, the mom, you know, she might need to help. It's up to the mom. But the idea, it stands. It's a good concept for us to think about. And the Bible talks about that as well. Why are you talking about the speck in your neighbor's eye when you have a whole beam coming out of your own eye? You can't even see out of one of your eyes, and the other eye is obstructed as well because a beam is like, inches upon inches wide. It's obstructing you. You are blind talking about you won't help. Then what you'll do is you'll put their eye out because you don't even have your own eyeballs together. And that's what these UN countries have going on. A bunch of them are just flunkies. They're just, not even whole civilizations trying to tell us what we should do with our stuff. How about you worry about your own business? How about you get a country together? Get you a half a country together that's functioning and get you a visa office that can vet people and maybe get together some kind of system for determining who's a criminal and who's not, and then try to come to the party. But don't come here and try to talk. Just try to come to the party and be grateful you're in the room. Have you ever been to an event like that where you show up and you're like, whoa, I didn't know these people were going to be here. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad I got to come. And then you're trying to go around and gingerly meet people, you're trying to go over and, hi, Stacey Washington. Hand your card over. And they're like, oh, who invited you? And you're thinking, somebody I'm going to love forever because I can't believe she invited me to this. This has happened to me a couple times where someone will say, we're having a little get together and it's out here and here's the address. And, the donation is optional. Do you want to show up? And me and my husband show up and we are looking around. I'm like, is that so-and-so? Is that so? Oh, you're thinking to yourself, how did I get invited to this? Oh, I remember now. That is how it is when America invites you to something. And no, I'm not being puffed up. And yes, I understand that these all blessings come from God. Yes, absolutely. But the fact is, these know nothing, do nothing countries don't have any room to talk to us or tell us what to do. Yes, I said it. If your country is a barbaric place and you haven't even made it past the concrete portion of the industrialization age where the majority of your expenditures are in pouring concrete roads and stuff. If you hadn't even made it there, how dare you? How dare you really? Just sit down. Sit and see off to the side. Don't say anything else. The adults have chatting to do. The adults have business to do. And you just get you a country together and then come back to us in 10 years and we'll be ready to talk to you as well. Especially since we're giving aid dollars to all these countries. All these countries getting all these billions of dollars in aid from us, and they have the audacity to try to tell us how to do something. How about if you just get off of our aid first, then try to tell something? Like, how about if you just say thank you? That's great. That would be fantastic. Send us a thank you note, a thank you card. Maybe come over here and take some of your illegal immigrants back with you. Just do something like that. This is how I feel. Get you... not even a half a country. How about if you get a quarter of a country together? That's where you just basically say, we're going to have part of our country be awesome. Kind of like China. China has 1 billion people plus, and they don't have all of their people living in style like we do. Like we have poverty in this country, but in every state in the union and our territories, you have different strata of living. So you have wealthy, you have upper class, middle class, you have working class, which is a huge, like the swing in between entering the working class and getting out of the working class. It's a constantly moving number because there's so many people moving in and out of it. And then you have people who are living at the technical federal poverty limit. How about if you just get a quarter of your country living above our standard for the poverty limit, and then you can have a chat with us? That takes a lot of research. You're going to actually have to figure out what our poverty limit is, what we have as a standard for people who in this country are poor, which, by the way, it means you have air conditioning, a dishwasher. It means you have cable TV and you have a car. That's poverty in this country. Now, I know there are people who are living below that who are also in poverty, but for the most part, poverty in this country means, you're not poor. You're not poor compared to people in other countries where poor means no running water, no toilets, et cetera, et cetera. So I know for some people, you're so triggered right now, you feel like you're on fire, and God bless you. Ice water and the truth is the remedy for that. Get you some truth and get it up into you, and then you won't be triggered. But for those who understand what I'm talking about, this is what the president was saying. He didn't say it as bluntly as I just did, but he basically was saying, we have our own country, and so we're going to run our own country, and you can have your international courts, but it's invalid. And if you start leveling stuff against us, like charging us with stuff, we're going to, cut off all your money, and we might arrest you if you show up in our country. So, no offense. That's basically what he's talking about. That's what he's putting down. And it's the best, the absolute best. So let's talk about this. It's the Secret Pot Commission, which sometimes I just wonder to myself if people really understand what they're doing. Like if they even believe, if they even believe that America is a thing. Because if you're working for the federal government, first of all, so I don't know if people know this or not, but if you work for the federal government, it's kind of similar to working for any other country in that you can do internal hiring. So you can move around the federal government. And it's a smart thing to do because every time you move, your time and grade stays the same, but you can get a little bump in your step system. It's a step system. So a step, you would be a GS5, step 10 or what have you. And so what people often do is they are where they are and they realize they're getting close to what they can earn, and maybe they have a bachelor's degree. Well, you can go and get a master's degree, and then that increases the numbers of jobs that you're open to, that you qualify for, and then you can move. And so if you're working in an office with a bunch of know-nothings who don't work very well and are disorganized, you just keep showing up and doing a good job for yourself and, you know, being a good employee to your supervisor, who would then recommend you to go work for someone else. And they might network for you a little bit, but you can move around on the inside of the government. So let's say you're working for the Department of State or the Department of Justice and you hate Donald Trump. You don't actually have to leave the federal government to no longer work in an area where you're kind of directly interfacing with his policy changes. You can say to yourself, you know what? He might be president until 2020. He might be president until beyond that. I just don't feel like working for this man. I'm going to move to another area of government where I'm less directly interacting with the Trump administration policies. Instead of doing all this quote unquote traitorous resisting, you could just transfer to another agency. And this works all over the world. You can not only work in the United States and the contiguous United States, you can work in any of our territories and overseas. So you could say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to go work in Germany, or I'm going to go work in Great Britain, and I'll work there for a while and kind of spend some time sightseeing and really not just being so plugged into the government because I just don't like this administration. And that's really an adult way to do it, because otherwise you're giving yourself ulcers and you got gray hairs coming in and you're getting ugly. You know, your face is starting to get the countenance of someone who you just don't have any joy in your life. These are options. And so when I think about that, sometimes I just wonder to myself, all these options that you have available to you. And instead you choose to hang around, and resist so that you can get fired. Like the one chick who was on the James O'Keefe video, she's already been let go from her paralegal job with the Department of State because they saw the video by James O'Keefe and her supervisor was like, not on the federal dime. You can't do political items on the federal dime. You're fired. She said she couldn't be fired, but there you go. She's gone. So this piece is over at the Washington Examiner. Secret pot policy committee exemplifies resistance inside the Trump administration. So everyone's been saying that this whole idea that there's a swamp, that's false. Donald Trump made it up. Yet here we are, this dedicated band of senior officials in his own administration. Remember, one of them wrote an anonymous op-ed. So if the swamp doesn't exist, who was that guy? So there's a recent revelation that a secret interagency committee has recently been convened by social conservatives in the White House at variance with Trump's stated support for easing the federal ban on marijuana. Now, full disclosure, I am not in favor of marijuana legalization beyond medicinal uses. That's just what I believe. And you know, if you believe differently, there's no animus. I'm not upset with you. I just don't think that that's something we need to do. So apparently, President Trump has hinted that he would allow states to forge their own paths on legalization without fear of contradicting federal policy or opening themselves up to law enforcement action from the Jeff Sessions Justice Department. And this is interesting because it kind of follows the same line of reasoning that Barack Obama did as he was evolving on same-sex marriage. He said he would not allow his Department of Justice under then Attorney General Eric Holder and later under, what was her name? You know who I'm talking about. He would not allow those two attorneys general to prosecute cases that, you know, where states were legalizing same-sex marriage because the rule of the land at the federal level was marriage was between a man and a woman. So this is similar to that. It's been an open secret since the beginning of this administration that many political appointees, including powerful figures in the White House, are staunchly opposed to key parts of the Trump agenda. This includes his commitment to a strong trade policy towards our competitors, his tougher stance on illegal immigration, And most of this opposition stems from the fact that the president largely relied on the usual Republican suspects to supervise personnel and staffing. And that's proved to be a fateful decision. I know why he did it. The president utilized the same mechanisms because we're talking about hiring 10,000 people, basically. Standing up a government, he did it with the very minimum number of people that he could, which is around 4,000, but they had trouble filling the slots. So in light of that, he couldn't just create his own system for hiring people. And even if he had the time to do that and he'd had the manpower to do it, it would have been seen largely as a smack in the face to the Republican insiders who he did rely on to bring him staffers. So that's where a lot of this leaking and stuff comes from. And we have to understand it's a beast of our own making because our government's too large, but it's also something that's it's endemic to the process. The system is set up so that when a Democrat is elected, the Democratic apparatus, it's like an octopus with a bunch of arms and a single brain, goes in and helps him stand up a government. It's the same thing for the Republicans. They have their own octopus who comes in and helps the Republican president stand up a government. He makes the larger decisions like the cabinet and things like that. They have to be people who are, open to his temperament, people that he feels he can trust and work with. Those individuals, he's much more integrally involved with their hiring, the decision to hire them. But with that 4,500 to 10,000, how could he possibly be involved with that and still be about the business of the day-to-day office of the executive and so much that he has to do? So this secret committee on weed referred to above is similarly wedded to marijuana, policies that are at odds with Trump's live and let live approach to the growing movement towards legalization. And, I guess in some ways you're like, well, if you're against legalization of marijuana, you might think this committee is good. I, for one, even though I'm against legalization, I don't think it's a good idea for there to be a secret committee of any kind. And again, I do think if you're interested in advancing a policy aim within an administration and you find resistance to that, it's perfectly fine for people to work on, things that they want to get done. But these secret committees, no. Resisting the current administration beyond what is within the silo of your job description, no. This is out of whack. It's out of order. And that's why we're seeing the kinds of things that we're seeing with the leaks and the mistrust and the different kinds of like the blow-ups. I mean, Omarosa's hire was a total mistake, and the ramifications of that will continue to harm individuals who look like her and want to be hired into presidential administrations. But the fact is she never should have been hired. But it's not okay to basically launch an attack on your employer that you premeditated. It was something you planned to do from day one. She planned to do what she did from day one, and it puts her in the same group as, this marijuana policy coordination committee who I understand their aim, they feel is honorable, but this is not the way to go about doing it. And so, and I know some people will disagree, and believe me, I get it. I totally get it. But I just don't agree with this. I think when we go about doing something that's good, but we do it in a dishonorable way, we kind of guarantee that the good thing that we want to do, the good outcome, won't happen. And so, many times in the Bible, you'll see where someone wants to do something, and if they go about doing it in a way that's ungodly, invariably, even if they get the thing that they were seeking, it turns out to be more of a curse than a blessing. So we have to do things in good order. And I hope I'm making sense on that one. It's weird because I do support, keeping federal marijuana policy where it is, but I don't think this is the right thing to do. So anyway, when we get back, we're going to have Kyle Drennen, who's a senior news analyst for Media Research Center. Stay right there. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Innocent until proven guilty. Those words represent the core of America's Anglo-Saxon criminal justice system. Those words mean that an enemy or angry neighbor cannot accuse you of a crime and have you hauled off based upon their word alone. There must be enough probable cause present to warrant an investigation by an impartial body. If warranted, charges can be made, and the defendant gets to examine all evidence gathered against them. At that point, free legal representation will be provided by the state to ensure that no one has to defend himself or herself alone. Then a jury of one's peers considers the accusations brought by the state and the defense's response. A unanimous vote is required to convict. We must not throw out this system to replace it with the one being foisted upon Judge Kavanaugh. He is forced to prove his innocence without due process in the court of public opinion. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
Life is never picture perfect. Human beings come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and abilities. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we think we're prepared, the unplanned happens all the time. It's how we respond to the unexpected that shows our true humanity. But many do not see the value of every human life. Too many are willing to discard those who don't fit the picture of perfection. Abortion destroys the chance to love and to be loved. We never know what will fill the frames of our lives, or how empty those frames can be when we allow exceptions.
Every life is a gift.
Learn more at www.radiance.life.
Military Matters.
Army Corporal Morris Meshullam, final goodbye to a young Indianapolis man most here didn't even know.
He'd been gone for so long that they had pretty much given up hope.
Corporal Meshullam's remains arrived in Indiana. The 19-year-old was reported missing in action December 1st, 1950 in North Korea. And just this past summer, his remains were identified.
And my mom told her it would just be a miracle if they found his remains before she passed away. And I guess miracles still happen.
She is Morris's last surviving sibling. Still in somewhat disbelief today that all these years later, her brother is finally home. As behind the scenes, the Defense Department continues its process to identify and return thousands of Americans whose remains are unaccounted for from the Korean War itself. I'm Matt Smith, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the program. Last segment of the show, it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest. I just want to give you a quick programming update for the hearings tomorrow. And I know if you're like me, you'll be either listening on C-SPAN on your phone or, I don't know. I'm going to find some way to connect into it. Apparently, according to adweek.com, George Stephanopoulos is going to lead network coverage of the hearing from ABC News headquarters in New York. World News Tonight anchor David Muir will anchor coverage from Capitol Hill. ABC News senior congressional correspondent Mary Bruce will provide live updates, and so on and so forth. What I'll do is I'll put a link to this on the Facebook page, and so the listeners can check there at Stacey on the Right Show on Facebook, and you can find out different ways that you can tune into this. If you're not doing, God's work, which is going into an office or business someplace and working outside the home, or if you're doing God's work at home with the kiddos and you don't feel like having this drama in your life, you know what? Good for you. Good for you. I'm going to be tuned in because I kind of have to. I kind of have to do it. It's my pleasure to welcome Kyle Drennen, Senior News Analyst for Media Research Center. Kyle, thanks for joining in today.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I saw the report that you guys sent out. I was like, well, I knew it was skewed, but I couldn't believe it was this bad. Tell us exactly what's going on with the Kavanaugh coverage with the media.
Yeah, this morning we just put out a study here. We looked at all of the coverage since all of these accusations broke against Kavanaugh. It's been almost 2 weeks now, and we found nearly 6 hours of coverage on the network news, ABC, CBS, NBC. So 344 minutes, to be more precise. And out of that mountain of coverage, only about 8% of it actually focused on any of Kavanaugh's denials or, character witnesses in his favor or any acknowledgement that there wasn't corroborating evidence for a lot of these allegations.
Okay. So, and I understand there's an agenda here, and the media is controlled by the Democrats, and so they are doing the bidding of their overlords. But is there no one in the media who would say, you know, this could be someone I know? Like this, if this works for Judge Kavanaugh, it could work for anyone. It could work against anyone who they don't like you or they don't want you to have that job. And so you just find a few people who don't have any morals and don't have any allegiance to the truth. They trot out these false accusations and destroy you.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the media has had issues with this very topic. You think of Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose, and NBC News, in addition to Matt Lauer, they also had allegations against Tom Brokaw. And they actually, sort of employees at NBC, people like Andrea Mitchell and others, signed a petition saying, no, we believe Tom Brokaw and we don't believe these accusations. So, I mean, this is something that they've dealt with in terms of, having people fired for it, but also defending colleagues of theirs and saying they didn't believe the accuser and that sort of thing. So, yeah, you would
double
think
standard. Man, that's the worst. It's the worst.
Yeah, no, you would think they would be a little more sensitive to that, given all that they've gone through.
So, okay, Kyle, I do this during the show. I check in because I get updates from the White House press office, and they have just put out a letter from over 60 men and women who attended Georgetown Prep or sister schools that knew Brett Kavanaugh well during his time in high school. This letter directly refutes allegations released earlier today by Michael Avenatti. I won't read the whole text of the letter, but they basically say they've seen reports that Julie Swetnick, who says she graduated from Gaithersburg High School, says that, Brett Kavanaugh and Mark Judge participated in these rape gangs. And they're saying they've spent extensive time collectively spent with Brett and they do not recall ever having met someone named Julie Swetnick. 60 people say they've never met this woman who claims that she was a part of this party scene when he was a young man. 60 people, men and women. So what's the likelihood? What's the over-under on this actually being covered on any major news organization?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly what we're going to be watching for in the next 24 hours here. But given their track record so far, sadly it's not very likely that that's going to get much attention, if at all, if it's mentioned at all. Maybe they'll mention it a few seconds on one of the networks, but their track record so far is not making that look very likely.
I mean, this is real. Like if this were a court case, this kind of evidence would be submitted and then the judge would say, or, maybe, are you calling any of these people? And the defense, which would be the Kavanaugh side, would call a bunch of these people and they would deny and refute that Julie Swetnick ever ran in their circle. And 60 people, that would be an overwhelming amount of evidence that a jury would have to consider to be completely exculpatory for him. Like this exonerates him in the world of, did you know this person? Did y'all run together? Was he there when people were raped? 60 people saying no, that's pretty definitive.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a compelling piece of evidence that should be included in the coverage and should be put right up there, next to the allegation. It should get equal time, but, they've shown little or no interest in anything that goes against the narrative of, Brett Kavanaugh is guilty. That seems to be the narrative they want to push and that they want to go with. It's the one the Democrats obviously have decided on. So therefore, their liberal media allies have decided on the same narrative.
So, I think I just want to have a couple more of the details from your study about how often they played the accuser's side as opposed to him defending himself, because he has been very open, he's been very available, and now his attorney is out doing interviews to debunk some of this. It's not as if he's holed away, kind of saying, I don't want to speak to the media, which is usually the hallmark of someone who's guilty. He's actually out there trying to get the truth out. How much media coverage has that received as far as him specifically going out and saying, look, I'm innocent. The statements he's issued, the letter that he wrote to the 2 letters, I believe, to the Senate Judiciary Chair and ranking member.
Well, I mean, yeah, our study found that, this covers the accusations from both Ford and Ramirez, and his denials of both of those accusations amounted to 14 minutes of network airtime, which 14 minutes was only 4.1% of their total coverage. So, I mean, just a paltry amount of time was given to his explicit, emphatic denials of these allegations versus the just sheer tonnage of the coverage, which, again, I mean, we're talking about 6 hours of coverage and only 14 minutes total of that, all that coverage had featured his denials.
So do you see it having, I know you guys, you do all the research and everything, but opinion-wise, Kyle, do you see this, the continual trotting out of these, fake accusers, having an impact on whether or not the Senate goes forward with the vote, the Judiciary Committee goes forward with a vote on Friday?
We'll certainly have to see how things go tomorrow with this hearing. I mean, it's very clear where the media, again, with the Democrats, have already decided his guilt. They're really not interested in giving him sort of a fair hearing at all. So, I mean, we'll have to see. Obviously, the focus has been on a handful of Republicans here, and where they are standing, and they've kind of all said they want to go through the hearing, and then we'll see. So it's I think that tomorrow is going to really kind of determine that. But yeah, I mean, the media coverage is just it's so incredibly one-sided. I mean, if they had any interest in fairness or balance, they would at least be trying to spend half of their time talking about the allegations, and then the other half talking about his defense and talking about all of this evidence that's coming out in his favor, and trying to get to the bottom of this. I mean, this is what the media claims they want to do. They claim are interested in facts, they're interested in truth, they're interested in finding out what actually happened in situations. Well, this is their opportunity to do that, and right now, and so far, they have been failing at that.
You're so right, Kyle. Okay, so what's the title of today's show is, what's the over-under on the first Kavanaugh accuser, Dr. Blasey Ford, actually showing up tomorrow. Apparently, she couldn't fly, so she's driving across the country, which this is the most ludicrous thing I've ever, George Soros would have put her on a private plane if she wanted to, but she didn't want the optics of that. So this is the way to kind of garner sympathy from Americans who, I got none. I'm sorry, I just don't have anything left in me. I've been squeezed dry by these shenanigans. What do you think? Does she show up tomorrow, or does she flake out at the last minute? It is anybody's guess. It seems like she's done the sort of preparatory work that was required. She's filed a statement with them and this, that, and the other thing that was expected. So, it seems like she's going to be there. It seems like everything is teed up for that, but there have been so many twists and turns in this so far and so many delays. I certainly would not be surprised by, whatever happens here. And again, I think that's another thing. The media should be having some questions and having some skepticism about some of these delaying tactics that have gone on over the past 10 days or so. And you're not really seeing a lot of that in the coverage. So one of the things that our guest from the first hour pointed out, Cassie Smedile of the RNC, pointed out that there are cases that are coming through the Supreme Court that are that speak to this. So it's not going to be. This is really. This means a lot. It means a lot to the Democrats who don't want to see any kind of reversals on some of their key social issues. It means a lot to Republicans who want to see the court return to a constitutional foundation. And it means a lot to Americans because President Trump has the right to choose. And, Democrats don't think he does. Republicans think he does because Barack Obama was given his opportunity to do so. And I think people are just, everybody's fed up. I think everyone on both sides are fed up, but for different reasons. I actually think that if she shows up, she brings with her a bunch of unicorns who claim they've also been assaulted by Judge Kavanaugh, and it'll be the first time we ever get to see unicorns in person, in real life. That's what I think is going to happen.
No, I mean, we are going to be, we are sort of in war room mode, as they say here. We've got people, we're going to be having people come in early tomorrow morning, stay late tomorrow night. We're going to have all the coverage, media coverage, examined, from, the networks to the cables and everything. So we are on it here. We're going to be looking at how the media is covering the whole hearing, from beginning to end. And we'll be writing up our analysis and doing more studies, and it'll all be on Newsbusters.
We will visit the website, and if needs be, we'll have you or someone else from Newsbusters and Media Research Center come back on to kind of unpack all this for us. I'm going to be glued to it, but mainly as I move about doing other things I have to do, I'm just going to have it on my phone, live streaming it, so I can listen. It's such a shame that this is where we are. Americans really need a fourth estate that reports on everything, and we don't have that right now, and it's detrimental to our republic for us to be in a situation where we don't have investigative media that we can trust, journalists that are running around, doing that heavy lifting, from both political parties. People in Washington fear the electorate the most when they know that an active watchdog in the form of the press is reporting on them and watching them. That is when they know we can't step out of line because this will hit the newspapers and voters will vote us out. We haven't had that for, 15 years or so, maybe more?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a shame, and, a lot of people in the press like to tout their constitutional role and sort of puff themselves up and say how important they are. Well, if you really believe that, then now is the time to live up to that and to do your jobs.
Amen to that. Kyle Drennen, Senior News Analyst for Media Research Center. Thank you for the work. We'll be looking at Newsbusters and seeing the reporting as you have everybody out ready to rumble. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on.
All right. Talk to you again soon. That's the end of the program, you guys. We have, let's see, I wanted to give you guys a little preview for tomorrow. Tomorrow, and I'm just double checking here. Oh, well, I don't see anyone on here, but I know on Friday we have Ariel Davidson, Economic Research Assistant at the Hoover Institute. She'll be with us on Friday. Not sure who's joining us tomorrow, but I'm sure it'll be someone awesome. So you want to be here, same bat channel, same bat station. Also, you can head to StaceyOnTheRight.com or Stacey on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. And by all means, if you're one of the people who listens or watches on any of the streams, hit the subscribe button, ask to get notifications on there. We really appreciate that. As far as tomorrow, I just ask that you would continue to pray over the Kavanaughs. Call that number I posted on Facebook for Senator Grassley's office, and let's trust God to do something big in the way of keeping justice at the forefront. He can do it. We just have to ask. He will do it. We just have to ask. We have to trust him, not be double-minded, and we have to ask. All right. God bless you. Have a great night tonight. See you tomorrow.